y'all, it's Cam again. This is Robert Hur Classified Documents, Chapter 12, Video 3. We're on page 246. We just have like 5 or 6 more pages to go. But anyway, let's get started. It says we also believe some of the same evidence that supports reasonable doubt for the classified Afghanistan documents also supports reasonable doubt for the notebooks, including Mr. Biden's cooperation with the investigation, his diminished faculties in advancing age, and his sympathetic demeanor. These factors will likely make it difficult for jurors to conclude he had criminal intent. Finally, the two main sets of evidence summarized above suggesting that Mr. Biden knew he was not allowed to keep classified notebooks do not suffice to prove his willfulness beyond a reasonable doubt. The first set of evidence is that Mr. Biden, at his staff's insistence, stored his classified note cards in a SCIF at the archives. And several months earlier, in the fall of 2016, he told his officer, "They didn't even know I had this notebook." This could suggest that Mr. Biden concealed his notebooks from staff to avoid restrictions on his access to or use of them. But the defense will argue that this treatment of the note cards and notebooks is also consistent with an innocent explanation. Mr. Biden may have simply acquiesced to his staff's decision to store his note cards in the archive SCIF, even though, as he suggested to his ghostwriter on April 26, 2017, he, like Mr. Reagan and the Department of Justice before him, did not think he was required to do so. If that is what happened, Mr. Biden was not required to inform his staff that their, in his view, unnecessary advice would also apply to his notebooks. His failure to flag the notebooks for what he believed to be his staff's overly cautious treatment is not compelling evidence of willfulness. In the same vein, Mr. Biden could have concluded that the forms he signed about safeguarding classified information in the archive SCIF were boilerplate paperwork that applied in most cases, but not to the handwritten materials of a former president or vice president, which historically have been treated as the former office holder's personal property. And he could point to McGrail's current understanding that the note cards were stored in a SCIF simply to keep them secure, not because they were classified. The second set of evidence concerns the guidance on best practices that counsel Cynthia Hogan gave Mr. Biden in 2010 and 11 about handling classified information, and his decision after receiving this guidance to store the notebooks in a safe in the White House. This evidence, too, is consistent with innocence. By the time Mr. Biden left the White House in 2017, Hogan's guidance about storage in a safe was 6 years old, and Mr. Biden had long since stopped following it. The evidence suggests that he did not store his notebooks in a safe for the last several years of his administration, and no one in the White House raised concerns. While Mr. Biden may have recalled Hogan's advice and concluded that it meant he should not bring the notebooks home with him when he left the White House, there's no evidence he did so recall. And there would have been good reason for him not to think this way, especially since Hogan gave her 2010 advice 7 years earlier during a meeting scheduled to last 10 minutes, and Mr. Biden had long since stopped following her advice, which Hogan told us would have reflected best practices rather than legal requirements. For these reasons, we did not believe the government could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Biden knew it was unlawful to retain his notebooks at his home after the vice presidency. The evidence does not prove beyond reasonable doubt that Mr. Biden willfully disclosed national defense information in the notebooks to his ghostwriter. We've also considered whether Mr. Biden willfully disclosed national defense information to his monitor by reading certain passages of his notes aloud and nearly verbatim from national security meetings. Mr. Biden should have known that by reading his unfiltered notes about classified meetings in the Situation Room, he risked sharing classified information with this ghostwriter, but we do not believe that evidence supports charges of willful disclosure beyond a reasonable doubt. At least 3 times, Mr. Biden read classified notes from national security meetings to Zwanitzer nearly verbatim. The first 2 incidents involve the same notebook passage. On February 16, 2017, Mr. Biden appeared to explain to Zwanitzer that a notebook entry related to a long meeting on the Security Council on it probably was classified. Mr. Biden had skipped over this entry entirely during a recorded conversation with Zwanitzer several months earlier in October 2016, but during the February 16, 2017 recorded conversation, Mr. Biden read aloud to Zwanitzer portions of the notebook entry that contained classified information. 2 months later, on April 10th, 2017, during another recorded conversation with Zwanitzer, Mr. Biden turned to the same notebook entry and read additional classified portions aloud, again nearly verbatim. He did so immediately after reviewing aloud highly emotional notebook entries about the death of his son Beau and other personal topics, which appeared on the pages right before the classified entry. This evidence shows that Mr. Biden disclosed classified information to Zwanitzer, who was not authorized to receive it, but the evidence falls short of proving that Mr. Biden did so willfully. That is, that he knew these notebook passages were classified and that he intended to share classified information with Zwanitzer during the February 16, 2017 conversation. Mr. Biden appeared to say that the meeting his notes summarized, not his notes himself, probably was classified. Though it was foreseeable that Mr. Biden's notes about a classified meeting would themselves be classified, which they were, the evidence does not prove definitively that Mr. Biden actually knew that or that he intended to share classified information. And during the April 10th, 2017 meeting, jurors could well conclude that Mr. Biden read from the same classified entry without pausing to consider that it was classified. Even his discussions of highly emotional topics with Zwanitzer just before he read the classified passage, and the lack of any pause before Mr. Biden launched into reading the classified entry. Though it would require jurors to find that Mr. Biden ignored or missed clear warning signs that he was sharing classified information with Zwanitzer in February and April of 2017, we believe some reasonable jurors would likely reach that conclusion. The third incident happened on April 24th, 2017, when Biden read aloud to Zwanitzer portions of a different entry of classified notes from a National Security Council meeting, also nearly verbatim. When Mr. Biden could not read a particular word in the entry, he showed the entry to Zwanitzer but warned him some of this may be classified, so be careful. I'm not sure. It wasn't marked classified, but Mr. Biden nevertheless continued to read aloud in nearly verbatim portions of the same passage of his notes, some of which classified at the secret level. Mr. Biden's decision to read notes nearly verbatim to Zwanitzer that Mr. Biden had just identified as potentially classified cannot be justified. But the evidence does not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he intended to share classified information. Mr. Biden told Zwanitzer he was not sure the notebook passage he read was classified. That is enough to create reasonable doubt about whether Mr. Biden acted willfully. There's also evidence that Mr. Biden took some steps to avoid sharing classified information with Zwanitzer, as explained in Chapter 5. Mr. Biden sometimes skipped over notebook passages to avoid reading classified information, if called as a witness at trial. Zwanitzer would testify that Mr. Biden mentioned the need to be careful because he was worried that there was a possibility that some of the stuff, handwritten entries in the notebooks, could be classified, and there were things he couldn't tell me, lines he couldn't cross. Given the intelligence and military officials present and the topics discussed at the meetings, Mr. Biden recounted for Swaniter. Mr. Biden should have realized that his notes did or were likely to contain classified information, but taken as a whole, the evidence will likely leave jurors with reasonable doubts about whether Mr. Biden knew he was sharing classified information with Swaniter and intended to do so. For these jurors, Mr. Biden's apparent lapses and failures in February and April 2017 will likely appear consistent with the diminished faculties and faulty memory he showed in Swaniter's interview recordings and in our interview with him. Therefore, we conclude that the evidence does not establish that Mr. Biden willfully disclosed national defense information to Swaniter. The end. Anyway, I'll get these loaded up and I'll talk to y'all later. Have a good afternoon. Bye.